Hi, this is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. Hope you enjoyed this Game Industry Insight, a look behind the scenes at game development. And be sure to subscribe and you can pitch future video topics. For today's Industry Insight, I want to talk about the importance of failure and why the game industry needs to be more proactive about covering it. This will be based on a post over on Game Wisdom that should be up the day that you are watching this video. Now, as we've talked about many times over with podcast guests, the game industry has always been an industry of hit makers, be it in the AAA market with titles like Mario, Call of Duty, Overwatch, and so on, and the indie space with Minecraft, Five Nights at Freddy's, and again, we can keep going on. But for every one of those games mentioned, there are dozens, if not possibly at this point, hundreds of games that have failed for one reason or another. And the game journalism as a whole has really dropped the ball, in my opinion, when it comes to talking about these failures. And this is presenting kind of an issue when it comes to getting into the game industry for the first time. As we've said, when it comes to credible sources about the ins and outs of game development, there really aren't a lot of valid sources on the internet. There's a lot of hearsay. There are certainly all those ads that say, take our 2-week course and you'll be a game designer. That infamous commercial about tightening up the graphics on level 3. But the problem when it comes to talking about the game industry, like we've said before, is that it's not something that you really know about until you've actually done it. You can, design little prototypes, you can go to college, and you can even try working on a small project with friends. But until you've gone through the entire process of prototype, iteration, and publishing, there's a lot that can go wrong there. And one of the things that has been very enlightening, especially with the Perceptive podcast, has been a chance to talk to developers who've had massive hits, who've barely broken even, and sadly some who've had games that have utterly failed. And when we say fail, we're not talking about barely breaking even or having enough to go on. I'm talking about developers who put all their time and effort and money into a game to find that it doesn't even come close to matching even enough to pay the amount of time that went into it. And that is very scary. As we've said when we talk about feature creep, there is that voice in your head that always says, I can spend more time on this game. If I spend more time, I'll make it better, and lo and behold, we'll get more reviews and we'll earn more money. But there's just so many things that can go wrong with the game industry. And it is once again time to ruffle some feathers among game developers. As I've said before, if you ask 9 out of 10 game designers, or at this point maybe even 10 out of 10, what does it take to make video games for a living? They will most likely say something along the lines of, just make video games. And in my opinion, that is terrible advice. Terrible to the point of being negligent when it comes to helping someone understand what goes on. And this goes back to my presentation that I did a few months ago regarding what it takes to get into the game industry, or my Scared Straight program. And I said this, and this next part is going to be one of the big takeaways. Making a good video game is not enough. And so many people enter this industry thinking that if I just keep making video games, I'll succeed. But as we have talked about, whether it's through these vlogs or with guests on the Perceptive podcast and livecasts, a lot can go wrong that can just gum up your process. Let's say you do make that dream game, but because you didn't understand management and couldn't keep people on task, your game is now 2 to 3 years over budget and over time, and how are you going to make that money back? Or your game came in right on their time, it's all out, it's good, but no one decided to do PR, and now your game after 40 days is way off that front page. How are you going to get people to buy your title? And sadly, and this is another part that it's probably going to scare some people, even if your game is amazing, that doesn't mean it's going to sell well. And there are a lot of secondary skills that go into being profitable or even just breaking even when it comes to making games. Understanding PR, designing a website, marketing your game, and again, even simple things like project management. Have you ever worked with 4 or 5 people across the world and trying to put something together? Because again, it doesn't matter if you have the best damn idea. If you can't manage anyone, the game never gets done. And sadly, when it comes to the game industry, most places will not cover this stuff unless it's a spectacular failure. Again, stuff like No Man's Sky or a Mass Effect Andromeda. But that's on the big end of the scale. Like I said, there are plenty of smaller titles that have either had small failures, as in they just barely broke even, to those failures where they don't have enough money to work on another game. And unfortunately, without properly educating people, it's one of those cases where history will repeat itself. One of my favorite sections in Game Developer magazine when it was still around were the postmortems, when developers would talk about what went right, what didn't go right, and their key takeaways from that project. And this kind of information is worth its weight in gold, right up there with the feedback that you can get from going on early access. Because if someone made a mistake that almost cost them their studio, that would be something you should be able to learn, and something that you should be able to take away from. And unfortunately, again, most sites will not talk about this. You basically have to find someone's blog, or maybe get lucky and have a post on Gamasutra. Very recently, there was a blog post from a developer who talked about how their project crashed. And I don't mean crash as in the game came out and no one bought it. I mean they never finished the game. And again, that is one of the major risks of game development. You can have all the money in the world, the best idea you can think of, but if your team doesn't come together, you can't get everything finished, that game's going to collapse on itself. And sadly, we have seen cases like that, especially from the early access and Kickstarter route, of developers biting more than they can chew, and the game just never comes out. And that is definitely one of the worst things, because we're not even getting to the point where marketing and PR come into play. If you can't even manage your team to get a game out, that is almost as sure of a blacklisting for the industry as there ever was. Because it's not just you unable to come up with an idea or be creative, it's you just failing trying to make something that you love. And like I said, the game industry is ruled by passion, especially from the independent space. And having your dream idea just collapse under the weight of itself is a very hard blow, and has led to, again, the amount of stress that goes into making video games. And this is why there needs to be more information out there regarding what happens when things don't go as planned. Now, earlier in this video, I mentioned games like Five Nights at Freddy's, Minecraft, Stardew Valley, and so on. But here's the thing. Those games still have that risk factor. The industry is very weird when it comes to producing hits like this, especially among the independent space. Because those games that I just mentioned, I am sure there are games that are as or even more creative and inventive than them that didn't succeed. And I'm sure if we go on Steam right now, we could probably find a few. But that's kind of the flip of the coin. You never know when that unique idea is going to turn to the next Minecraft. Or it's so unique that no one wants to touch it, and it just disappears never to be seen again. And there is a grayer topic to be had about influencers when it comes to the video game industry, but that is easily another topic in of itself. Now, before we end this post, or end this video, I want to reiterate something that I've said before. If you are a game developer watching this, or know someone who's working on a game that is having trouble getting their unique game marketed or in front of YouTubers, please let me know, get in touch with me. While I am certainly not a PR master, I will be more than happy to take a look at your game here. And while I may not be able to, again, be the most flashy guy out there. I can at least do my best to show it off in a light to hopefully get that interest going. And if you want to get in touch with me, send me a message here, email josh@game-wisdom.com, Twitter, anything like that. Because nothing makes me sadder than seeing an amazing game that no one is playing. When I spoke with Abby Games about Renowned Explorers, they told me that if it wasn't for Total Biscuit, that could have been it for the game and for the company, because no one else was covering the game at that time, or no one big enough to make that mark. And sadly, that again is just one of the many things that can happen or get in the way of your game succeeding. But with that said, we're going to wrap up today's industry insight here. So once again, when it comes to making a video game, you need to understand more than just being a designer or an artist or a programmer, especially if you want to make a living. And those three words are very, very important. Because here's the other major point for today's post. There is a very big difference between making video games and making video games for a living. And for some of the indie developers watching this, I'm sure that may have given you a chuckle as you have thought about that many times over. But again, for the enthusiasts or first-timers watching this, again, you can take an idea and turn it into a simple game. If you understand Unity or Game Maker or even RPG Maker, you can make something. But can you make something that can earn back its development costs? Can it even earn more than that? Now, unfortunately, for a lot of games, they don't quite get there. And like I said at the start, when it comes to being in the game industry, even if you have that great game idea, it's still so many factors that can get in the way. So, for those of you watching this, I know this may be a tough topic to talk about, but if you've worked on a game that sadly was a failure for one reason or other, and if you want to share your thoughts, let me know in the comments below. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know if you have ideas for a future vlog. And check back for daily discussions on design here and on GameWisdom.com, where we examine the art and science of games. So until next time, have a great evening. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And come back around 10 Eastern for regular streaming. For a collection of my writings as well as weekly podcasts on game development, be sure to check out game-wisdom.com. Follow me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates throughout the day. And to help support everything that I do, you can find me on Patreon under GWBycer or Game Wisdom. Your donations can help to keep things running, and when we hit some goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy. So, thanks again for watching, and be sure to come back for daily discussions on game design on the Game Wisdom channel.